Hey, what's up, everyone? Mike here from The Art of Guitar, back from doing a ton of podcasts. I just uploaded them on the channel a couple days ago. Check those out. I know there's a lot of entertaining stories inside some of those and a lot of information. If you're trying to become a pro at whatever you're doing, especially guitar, there's a lot of information in there from people that have lived many years and have gone through so many years and decades sometimes of experience, and you can learn a lot from these people. Okay, today we're going to talk about 10 rules that professionals seem to break all the time. I was trying to learn some songs and techniques from a certain artist for my next artist series, and I realized as I was watching him that he was breaking a ton of rules that you usually learn in guitar lessons not to do. So I wanted to share 10 of those things that I'm noticing in a lot of guitar players and myself, and show you that just because you learn something in lessons, it might be the proper technique, but it doesn't mean that you always have to stick with it. Sometimes rules are made for breaking, and that's how you create your own style down the road. So here are my top 10. So the proper way to actually strum or pick notes is to keep your hand floating, so you get this sort of motion happening when you play. Okay, just some Green Day riff or something. But you'll see once in a while, the guitar player will touch the guitar with a certain finger. What I do whenever I end up anchoring on the guitar is using my pinky. So I'll be like this sometimes. But it depends on the song. I try not to do that. The reason it's not good for my technique, at least, is because when my fingers are on the guitar and I pick up and down, my hand opens up and closes. So it creates this really weird feeling over time. But you'll see professional guitar players do this all the time. I saw John Frusciante do that on a video. So doing this is the best thing. Keep your hand floating, but once in a while you might find yourself touching the guitar a little bit or the pickups. Okay, your guitar teacher will tell you not to push too hard on the strings. So I say this all the time. Just use enough pressure to make the note happen. So for example, I'll even say to pick a note and barely touch, add a little bit of pressure until you finally get a sound. And that's all it takes. It's barely any pressure at all. But when you play live and you've got adrenaline rushing through your body and you're playing to a big crowd or whatever and you're excited, it's really easy to over push. So you'll actually hear, it's hard to see them doing it, but you'll hear the notes push themselves a bit sharp, because when you push too hard, that's what happens to a note. So it just got a little bit sharper. So you'll hear sometimes at the end of a song, somebody will hit a chord and it'll be slightly out of tune, and then it'll slowly just go right in tune because they're pushing really hard and then they relieve the pressure. Like that. Check it out. You'll hear that in some recordings. A lot of guitar players are guilty of the next thing. When you take guitar lessons, your teacher will tell you to, or if you take lessons from me, I will tell you to only use the smallest motion for picking. So if you're doing power chords, you might just go. I call that wrist rotation picking. But when you're in concert and you're playing and you're a pro in a band, sometimes you want to use more motion to make it look better when you're playing. Or it just helps you feel it better. So maybe you're going. Or if you're Pete Townsend, you might use your entire arm, and that's rotating from the shoulder. So I'm not going to do this here. I'll probably knock a camera over or something. But your whole arm comes around like this, and you strum. It looks great. Such a great visual on stage. And yeah, look up some old Who videos, and you'll see him doing that all the time. I wonder if his shoulder is okay. Okay, you'll hear it's bad to rely on shapes when it comes to playing, and I had that experience recently where I went to play a part of a song that I had relied on shapes for, and I blacked out basically on the shape, and it was my vision went funny, everything looked kind of blurry, and I messed up really bad live because I was relying on shapes. But you'll hear people do that a lot. They'll think triangle shape, diagonal shape. They'll just have these shapes in mind that'll sort of trigger their memory to play a certain part. Even though a lot of pro guitar players will know the notes that they're playing as well, sometimes when you're learning a song, it's easy just to think of shapes. Just like when you learn open chord shapes. I'll say the D shape looks like a triangle, the C shape looks like a diagonal line, and that's the first thing that really sticks with you. Later you fill in the theory behind it. Just like shapes, you don't really want to rely on fret numbers, but we do. So, for example, if you're about to start a solo, and in your head you're thinking 12, because a lot of us learn from tab. Well, that's the 12th fret. If you're starting a solo and you think 12, And that could be a very powerful anchor to get you started. I'd rather have you think E, of course, being a guitar teacher, but sometimes when you're playing in a band and you know a solo starting on a certain number, it's hard to get that out of your head. So sometimes I'll be on stage and I'll think, okay, here comes, for example, if we're playing Magic Man, we just had a gig last night, so I have that in my head. My brain will say 15 because the first bend is at the 15th fret of the second string. But I don't want to think that. I want to think D, but it's almost too late because I already have that etched in my brain. So just so you know, sometimes when a pro plays, they will think in numbers as well, although they probably fight against it a little bit. Here's a rule that goes out the window almost immediately. If you're learning very classically, a lot of teachers will tell you to keep your thumb on the back of the neck towards the middle. Then when you play, your fingers will do the proper thing, which is to curve around and play. And guys like Steve Vai do this all the time. A lot of shredders do this. But the second you turn on a video of Clapton, let's say, or Jimmy Page, you'll see that the thumb comes over the top, or Jimi Hendrix. What you get is this blues hand position that I love playing within. And it's funny, the first time I asked my teacher if this is proper, he said no, but everybody breaks that rule. So if you put your thumb over the top, it really helps you with bends. See how it's sort of a top, it's like a hook over the top, so it helps you pull the string in the right direction. If your thumb is back here, you have to bend sort of in this weird pushing the string up way. And even though shredders do it, like I just said, it's not really what you want to do when it comes to a lot of styles of music. So the thumb over the top, right off the bat, people break that rule. And it comes in handy when you do certain chords. So if you're playing a D chord and you want to play D over F sharp, bringing the thumb over for that is vital. Okay, I just saw a video on this not too long ago. It was about certain guitar players playing out of tune. And that's a really important thing to talk about a little bit because I don't think their intention is to play out of tune. But if you ever tune your guitar by ear, which a lot of people don't do nowadays, I made a video about throwing away your tuner. Don't throw it away, but just put it aside for a few months. Really develop your ear. If you start to tune using other methods besides a snark, let's say, all of a sudden you have this new way of hearing each tone. And sometimes you'll tune, almost always, you'll be tuning a little bit out of tune. So what does that do for your sound? Well, if you talk to guys like Kurt Cobain, back when he was alive, or John Frusciante, you'll see that there's a little bit of an off sound, which could actually sound pleasing in a weird way, depending on the style of music you're doing. So right now my guitar's in pretty good tune. I just used my snark not too long ago, so I'll just do my power chord thing I've been doing all day. Actually, I'll do bar chords because it involves more strings. Alright, that's pretty well in tune. If I was in the studio, I would probably do that. But if you tune by ear, I'm just going to use my fine tuners and put my guitar out just slightly. Okay, everything just went out a little bit. Now listen to this. Hear that? Just a little bit out. But it's weird. When you play like that live, people usually don't notice. And it fills up the sound in a very strange way. It's sort of like if you have a perfectly in tune guitar, all the frequencies are really nice and smooth. But if you have one string that's just a little bit out and it's not too far out, sometimes it can actually make the sound sound a little bit fuller and a little more trashy, which could be great in certain aspects, like we just said. Okay, I'm going to leave my guitar out of tune for the rest of the lesson because I think it's kind of cool. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the idea of only picking the strings that you're fretting. Of course, your guitar teacher is going to say, if you're playing a D power chord, take your pick, play those two strings only. Next power chord, same thing. Alright, the problem with that is nobody plays like that live. If you go see a rock band, a blues artist, almost anybody, they're not going to be looking at their fretting hand or their picking hand and saying, I only have to hit these two strings. Oops, I accidentally hit the third string. Let's go to the next couple strings. That would be a very handcuffed way of playing guitar. You want to feel free when you play. So instead of only picking the strings that you're fretting, eventually what I teach really hardcore on the website is fretting hand muting. So let's say we're playing that D power chord. My ring finger, the bottom of it, is touching the next string below it. And then your index finger is going to touch the other strings. So it kills all the other strings. So you can pick all 6 strings, but only the 2 notes that you're fretting will come through. It's a nice little trick, plus it gives you a tiny bit of a percussive sound. Versus that's a little bit boring when you could be going. And the last two rules that professional guitar players seem to break all the time have to do with standing and your posture. So I'm sitting for this lesson, but just imagine I'm standing. A lot of guitar teachers will tell you not to hold your guitar too low. They really don't say much about holding it too high, because when you practice, your guitar's pretty high. Some people put the strap on and set it to this level, stand up, and they look kind of goofy. I shouldn't say that. I just think personally it looks weird when a guitar is way up here. But if it's too low, a lot of guitar teachers will tell you that that's bad because it causes a lot of tension in your wrists because you have to really dip down to really grab the chords. And that is true. But you'll see that rule broken all the time. Right away, we'll bring back Jimmy Page. Look at James Hetfield. Almost any pro guitar player you'll see, they have a tendency to hold their guitar pretty low. James Hetfield is probably the ultimate example of the lowest you should hold your guitar, because I don't know, the thing's almost touching his knee. Like the top of his guitar is almost touching his knee. It's crazy. But they break that rule all the time, and if it works for you, go for it. You just have to find a way to conform your body to make it work. And that's going to involve the last rule that you'll hear all the time, posture. So when you're sitting and you're at your first guitar lesson, your guitar teacher most likely will tell you to sit up straight like this. But right off the bat, if you watch me, I come down a little bit. Sometimes it's to fit the screen of the camera. But what really is happening here is I'm just trying to be as comfortable as possible. Now, yes, theoretically, if you were to sit up completely straight like this, you will be able to practice longer with less stress on your back, so it's a very proper thing to teach. I always think of it as a stack of dishes. If they're straight up and down, they'll stand there all day, but if they're tilted just a little bit, there's a pressure that tends to want to keep pulling it down. So if you do sit up straight, maybe put a book on your head and practice, it can have good benefits for sure. You could practice a long time without pain, and you won't develop any pain over time, most likely. On stage, you might look a little too stiff, though. So looking down to try to see your fingers sometimes results in a little bit of a curvature, but you'll see guys play live, girls and guys play live, and they're hunched over, and they look like this when they play, and it looks like terrible posture. Angus Young always has his head down like this when he's headbanging. But over time, I'm sure that can cause some problems with the back. That's why I always teach to sit up straight as much as possible. But pros break that rule all the time. Just look at all the best guitar players live. You'll see that they're kind of like this. Rarely do you see this going on. I don't think I want to see guitar players playing like this anyway. Okay, so those are 10 rules that I came up with. You could probably come up with more. Put them in the comments if you want to. That your guitar teacher will teach you are bad, but that pros constantly seem to do, okay? Once you get to a certain level, breaking the rules seems to be the thing to do. So learn the rules first, learn to break them later, create your own style out of all this, and we'll see you at the next video. Thanks. Bye.